Well, as many of you know, I do a lot of work with Nichols history and with the archives, writing articles for Tualathais and things like that. And I'm very interested and occupied with the history of the school. And a few weeks ago, when Dr. Maritime asked me if I knew of anything archival, anything historical from Nichols that might be appropriate to this assembly, legends of the campus or whatnot, I had to honestly reply that I didn't know of anything. And no, by the way, Calvin Gordon Rand, who is that kind of wan and disconsolate youth you see, whose portrait is over the fireplace in the dining hall, he did not commit suicide there or anywhere else. He died of scarlet fever, kind of dull. But upon a little further research into the archives, I came up with some interesting material that I'd like to share with you here, and I'm going to read a short report that I wrote on the subject. Nichols School has never had any formal religious affiliation. However, at its original Norwood Avenue location, which you see there, for a brief time and at whose behest is unclear, a local clergyman made daily visits to the school, saying a prayer before the student body at the opening of each day and offering grace at lunch. This minister was David Yule Hornbeam, a native of Dundee, Scotland, who lived directly across Norwood Avenue from the school building. Already over 60 in 1907 and retired from his position at Knox Presbyterian Church on Tupper Street, Hornbeam appears to have been little liked by the students, who found him forbidding and irritable, and resented by the teachers. Latin instructor Theophilus Lever records the following in his daybook, now part of the Nichols archives. Came down from meeting with Mr. Nichols and found Hornbeam hollering at the boys, waving his cane. Seems that someone put rope shavings in his pipe tobacco, and he was calling up hellfire, demanding that the guilty party reveal himself. The boys skedaddled to the basement, knowing that Hornbeam could barely make it down the stairs. Much as I disapprove of naughtiness in the students, I cannot help but smile to see them get the better of the old fool. Given such unpopularity, it is unclear why Hornbeam retained his association with Nichols even in his apparently unofficial capacity as chaplain. With the school's move uptown to the Amherst campus in 1909, Hornbeam disappears from the Nichols records for several years, only to re-emerge in the 1913 commencement program, where he is listed as giving the invocation and benediction. In 1915, he spoke at the Christmas luncheon on the subject of God's will and America's destiny, and in 1919 he is listed as one of the monthly assembly speakers, presenting a talk on manliness and its relation to clean living. The Verdian of that year comments that, quote, Dr. Hornbeam favored us with thoughtful remarks on the occasion of his imminent return to Scotland, the land of his birth. However, Hornbeam either never made it to Scotland or else returned in short order, because in September 1920, Headmaster Walter D. Head wrote the following in a memorandum to the school's financial committee. I have been much in contact with Dr. Hornbeam. It seems that he has fallen into money difficulties, has lost his savings and his house. Although it pains him to do so, he asks whether the school can make any provision, as he has no family nor any other means of support. Suggest we look into putting him up in the spare room of the caretaker's cottage at nominal rent, perhaps $1 a month, until some more permanent arrangement can be found. It would appear that Head's plan was accepted by the trustees because school records indicate that Hornbeam indeed paid $1 a month for his room in the cottage, located just south of the present Colvin Avenue exit, from September until February of the following year, with the exception of December, in which, for reasons not recorded, he paid only 30 cents. Hornbeam was at this point 77 years old, and he frequently came into conflict with the old cottage's primary tenant, Henry Robinson. Here seen in his original employment file photo from 1911. Robinson was 36, a former bricklayer with a short temper and a steady thirst. Over the years, Head's papers indicate that he had to intercede on no fewer than 3 occasions with the police or other authorities due to Robinson's drinking and brawling. He relates the following in an undated letter to the Grounds Committee. Robinson's carousing becomes more and more troublesome. Just this past week, I have had to offer reference and explanation to the organizers of a laborers' picnic at which he was unfit to be in company, and to which, because of him, the police were called. He is an excellent worker when sober, but I fear that his conduct on the job reflects poorly on us. Not surprisingly, Robinson did not get on well with his new housemate, the aged and abstemious Dr. Hornbeam. Shouting and cursing in the cottage became audible to boys at play on the football field, and Hornbeam on 2 separate occasions asked the school to sack Robinson for drunkenness and profanity, claiming that Robinson had also brought women of low character into the dwelling after school hours and on weekends. Head writes, "There can be little doubt that Dr. Hornbeam is generally cantankerous and cross, but his points regarding Robinson are not without merit. I fear that we may need to find different lodgings for Dr. Hornbeam, even if it be at greater cost to the school. We ought also to look into the question of Robinson's continued employ here." As it happened, though, there was no need to relocate Hornbeam because in February of 1922, Henry Robinson reported to the headmaster that the aged minister had suddenly packed up and gone to Scotland. When pressed as to how a frail and penniless individual without family could have undertaken such a journey, and how it came to be that no notice had been given to the school, Robinson simply claimed not to know. And then, a month later, Robinson himself left the school, signing on as a crewman aboard a lake freighter. After this, nothing is heard of him. The story of Robinson and Hornbeam would perhaps be of little interest were it not for certain curious occurrences that began to occur a few years later. In the papers of Edwin S. Frisbee, assistant head of the junior school, we find the following in a 1926 letter to his son, apparently unsent. Mrs. Roble telephoned to say that Freddie Roble and his little brother walked to the school last Saturday evening, hoping to find someone to let them in as Freddie had left some homework in a classroom. While he was looking for assistance, the younger of the 2 lads wandered off toward the cottage, and there he says he saw a tall, pale figure in a black frock coat walk through the side of the house and into the lane, where he fixed him with a threatening stare before vanishing straight into the air. The child has been visited by nightmares ever since and is unable to go to school. I told Mrs. Roble that such imaginings are usual in children, but she remained quite upset. In 1934, Frisbee, now dean of the students, recorded the following in his preparatory notes for a faculty meeting. Imperative that we not allow the boys to get carried away with talk about odd things going on around the caretaker's cottage. Strange sounds, shrieks, dark figures lurking behind the house. Last week, a group of them came in at night and hid in the bushes waiting to see something, picked up by police who thought they were prowlers. Foolishness. Embarrassment to the school. While Frisbee clearly poo-pooed the notion of anything unusual going on at the caretaker's house, the caretakers themselves might have felt otherwise. School employment records show that between Robinson's departure in 1922 and the temporary suspension of occupancy of the dwelling in 1954, there were no fewer than 17 successive caretakers, most of whom left suddenly, and at least 5 of whom complained of conditions in the cottage, citing such phenomena as unaccountably broken household objects and flickering lights, ice-cold drafts during the summer, and moaning noises coming from the basement. Also noteworthy in this connection is an account contained in a typewritten memoir, Recollections of My School Days, given to the school by Talmadge Murch, Jr., class of 41, on the occasion of that class's 25th reunion in 1966. A weird story comes to mind. Some of the fellows and I came back to Nichols in the fall of '47 to watch the Kensington game. It was the third quarter in a tight contest with Nichols up by 3, but I had become distracted by the sight of an old fellow in antique-looking black clothes who seemed to be lingering on the far side of the goalpost near the cottage. I looked away to follow the game, and then suddenly he was there, standing next to me in the bleacher. I hadn't heard him approach. He laid his hand on my sleeve and said in a high, grating voice, "It is appointed unto men once to die, but after this is the judgment." My hair stood on end. I motioned to Jones, who was standing on my other side, but when Jones looked over, the old man had somehow retreated back into the crowd and disappeared. I don't believe I've ever been so startled. When I told them what had happened, the boys all thought I'd been at the bottom. This is the last reference I can find to unusual happenings in or near the cottage. However, an interesting development has come to light more recently related to the physical structure of the cottage itself. When crews began to inspect the house in 1999, preliminary to demolition prior to the construction of the new middle school and the expansion of the athletic center, they discovered that one end of the basement had been sealed off by a brick partition. Chiseling through the bricks, they discovered a tunnel-like opening in the building's foundation, leading to another seal of wood and cement, which they dismantled, revealing the following. Secondary cellar or extension, vaulted stone construction and earth floors showing several events of disturbance, sealed off air channel on the southwest end, old boxes and bottles, cross-shaped wooden feature on the floor. Cellar is likely a pre-existing farm structure dating before establishment of the school. Not structurally unsound, but recommend complete fill and seal during demolition of main dwelling. My own calculations, based on the Nussbaumer and Clark report, suggest that the location of the old center is, or was, roughly underneath the east end of Reagan Hall, closest to the 6th grade locker area and the joining stairwell. This odd case has preoccupied me greatly in the last weeks, and I would like, if possible, to expand our archival files on the matter. If you or anyone you know has heard any lore involving Dr. David Hornbeam, or if you've been aware in any way of unusual phenomena in the southeast corner of our campus, please contact me. Thank you.